One of the most important things in working with an SM916 is preventative maintenance. It's one of the key things to know about a machine. Today I'm going to cover those components with you and remove the covers as well. One of the things I want to go over is one of the tools. In a new delivery of an SM916, this is what's provided for you. We're going to throw that one away. Hardware store, local hardware store near you, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever you have. This is made by Stanley. This works a whole lot better than what's provided to you, and we'll be able to remove the push rivets. Normally one person can take all these covers off and do a PM, but I'm going to bring in someone to help me do this to kind of speed up the process.
Gary, how you doing?
Hi, Jimbo. You want to remove all the plastic push rivets. Now that I've taken the covers off, I want to show you a few preventative maintenance issues with the SM916. Once you get the covers off, the first thing you want to do is do an inspection of the chains and some other components with inside the undercarriage of the StepMill. The first thing you want to do is inspect the chains, and you want to look for a slack, too much slack in the chain where you get the steps that have a slope downward. You can look at that by the side view. As you can see here, the chain, the steps are hanging down, and that will cause a potential problem down the road if it keeps having too much slack in the chain. Eventually, on a 7000 PT, you'll notice that there's a mounting bracket right here, and on that mounting bracket that goes inside, it has your wiring harness hooked up for the main cable, which has been moved up here on the SM916. They moved it up about 11 inches to eliminate this kind of a problem whenever the chains got too much slack in them and they stretched and started rubbing on the wiring harness. You notice you have the steps hanging down here, and also you have some slack in the chain here. So if you do see that problem, the first thing you need to do is you need to make adjustments to the step chain. First thing you want to do is you need to loosen up the 2 9/16 bolts here and the 2 9/16 bolts below there on the pillow block bearings. Once you've made those adjustments there to loosen up those bolts, the next thing you need to focus on is your Allen head set screws here. You have one on the upper pillow block, one on the lower pillow block. You need to make adjustments to this to take the slack out of the chain. You want to make sure that once you make these adjustments, you want to keep about the same amount of thread count on the outside, on the upper one, as you do on the lower one. I'll start off with about 5 threads on the upper one. So now I'm going to move down to the lower one. Make sure you count the threads. Got about 5 right there. And then once you have those adjusted where you want them and you've counted the threads are pretty close to even, you need to tighten back your 9/16 bolts on your pillow block bearings. Move down to the lower one, tighten that up as well. Once you got that tight, you do want to do a little deflection in the steps like so. Once you made those adjustments, you notice that there's no more slope in the chain, maybe just a little bit. Also, I've taken the slope and the slack out of the chain up here. So once you've done that, you've made the necessary adjustments on this side. If you notice you have a slope on the other side, you want to continue with the same adjustments that you made here on the other side as well. One of the other things you want to focus on is your step hinges. These step hinges over time, a lot of sweat. You want to clean these up. If there's a lot of dust and debris in here, you want to wipe off each one of your steps And notice on this one has blue lithium grease. You can use blue. Today, for this purpose here, I'm going to go with some white lithium grease. And you want to lubricate each one of your step hinges with some grease. You run a bead from one side to the other. And once you've put a bead like that, you can run your finger over a couple times over the step hinge, like so, and that keeps lubrication with inside the shaft that's inside the hinge there. You want to do that on all 8 of your step hinges. The next thing you want to focus on preventive maintenance is your bearing plate here. Your bearings that are on the step chain right around and right on this bearing plate here. On this one here, they've used blue lithium grease as well. And I always put a little lithium grease. You can use white or blue. And you want to run a little bit where you can see where the bearings have tracked on this bearing plate. Take your finger, run it down. If you get a little excess, I always put a little bit on the bearing there. It's not going to hurt anything to do that. Smooth it on that bearing plate so that those bearings, as they track around, can pick up that lithium grease. Rub a little bit on the bearings if you have any excess. It's not necessary to cover the whole bearing plate. Your really main focus is to get it on the bearings. You can put a little bit on here. I always put a little bit on each one of the bearings, just because those bearings ride on that shaft. Once you can get a little more down here, you can rub it on that last bearing. Once you've done that, you want to do the same thing to the other side. Make sure you got some grease for the bearings to pick up and roll over. Rub some on the bearings themselves. Once you've done that in your step shafts, you pretty much covered as far as cleaning the steps with the rag. The other thing you want to do if you see any debris inside here, as you can see, there's a lot of dust and stuff that's picked up in here. You want to take a clean rag. You want to wipe down and kind of clean this up in here. You don't want this dust building up in here. Anytime you put fresh grease on here, you want to make sure that you've wiped this down in here as best as you can get to keep it clean. When you're doing PMs like that, keep the dust and stuff away from the machine. This one here is pretty clean. But you can reach down in here. If you see any grease you got on the frame, you might want to pick that off there as well. Cleaning it up. Once you've done that, the other thing you want to inspect for is you also have another chain inside here, which is your drive chain, which goes around the transmission and the inside of your upper sprocket. You want to make sure that that's nice and clean. The other thing you want to pay attention to on both of these chains is if you have any frozen links in there. And to look for those, sometimes you'll see a chain that'll be cockeyed up like that. It'll have a kink in it. If it has one like that, there's 2 ways to take care of it. One is you can try to lubricate it with some 30-weight motor oil or some tri-flow lubricant. Or if that doesn't take the kink out, you may have to ultimately end up replacing the chain. And that'll be decided upon whenever you're doing preventative maintenance. The last thing that you want to inspect while doing a PM is your alternator belt. As you notice from this angle here, you can pinch the belt from side to side, and what you're looking for is any cracks, if their belt is frayed any way. If you see that, you want to go ahead and replace that belt when you're doing a PM on a StepMill or SM916. From this angle, I also want to show you is the drive chain, which has an idler sprocket. One of the things you want to pay attention to is that this idler sprocket has free movement in keeping tension on the drive chain. As you notice here, when I'm pushing up on it, you got some freedom with the idler sprocket. That's what you're looking for. You do not ever want to tighten this bolt because you notice there's some play in that. That's what that's designed for, to keep constant tension on the drive chain. Once you've performed all those things, you've pretty much covered the preventative maintenance on the SM 7000 StepMill, and you got the machine running properly.